had not recorded. So I want to welcome you all to our the A-APRP-GC's African Women's Emancipation Day. I also want to welcome you on behalf of the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. I want to also acknowledge that though the actual day has passed, that our celebration or our commemoration of African Women's Emancipation Day is also linked to International Women's Day, which is an outgrowth of the sort of March 8th, 1917 Petrograd demonstration of Russian women to overthrow the Tsar at the time. I know that often International Women's Day is celebrated in many ways that doesn't necessarily always acknowledge its revolutionary history. And so I just wanted to call attention to that. So what we are going to do at first, the A-APRP-GC has a tradition of asking someone who is a member of the indigenous community here in the United States to give us a land acknowledgement and a welcome. And so I believe Chief Billy Tayac is on, and he is going to offer that to us today. He should be able to unmute himself. Are you there, Chief Tayac? I see him on, I just don't, not unmuting. Let me see if I can unmute him. Chief Tayac, can you hear me? Or are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, I'm gonna give it one more minute just to see if he's struggling with unmuting himself. And if not, I think I can read a little that he offered via email beforehand. Okay, there.
Not to say, you're unmuted.
I'm unmuted.
Okay, you can take the floor.
Okay. My name is Billy Redwing Tayac. I'm the hereditary chief, Piscataway Indian Movement, Beaver Clan, son of Chief Turkey Tayac, American Indian Movement leader. Today, I wish to send a message to all people, a solidarity message. And it occurs between us and the AARP way back 50 years ago. Now, with the rise of the American Indian Movement in 1972, Native people and the resistance to centuries of oppression by the United States of America again rose to the surface. We realized that the only solution to the problem was seeking allies. The African and the Native people through previous centuries had resisted, but it was a time to come together again. I met Bobby Brown and Stokely Carmichael Kwame at a demonstration of the National Ball and immediately formed a solidarity relationship, and we bonded together in the common struggle. AIM went to Howard University for lectures and also helped recruit for the AARP. Together, we were a much stronger force. AARP assisted during the Wounded Knee armed resistance, and the leadership actually went there, but could not be put in. That was Bobby Brown and Stokely Carmichael. Later, AIM and AARP went international together into Libya to raise more awareness for our causes. Our members interacted together on many occasions. These actions formed a lasting bond between our people. AIM and AARP have traveled the path together for 50 years and will continue to follow that path together. We are bound together by the spirit that all people are created equal, and that never again will we allow that to happen. Peace and power to the people. Billy Tayac.
Thank you so much for that history and for helping us to open our program today. Sorry. Make sure
My pleasure.
Thank you. All right. So I am going to, like I said, in trying to respect people's time, go ahead and get ready to move into our first panel. I am trying to see if our moderator, Akua, is logged in. If not, I will just begin to introduce our speakers. Akua, are you there? Okay, so I'm just gonna take from there. So our excuse me, our first panel is entitled "Emancipation of Women is a Precondition for the Emancipation of Men." We will have 4 speakers from actually all around the world. And so the first speaker that we will have is Dr. Takiyah Harper-Shipman, who is an assistant professor of Africana Studies at Davidson College in North Carolina. She engages research and teaching questions on political economy in the African diaspora. She is particularly interested in the ways in which discourse structures political economies of development, human rights, and more recently, gender. Her most recent book, Rethinking Ownership of Development in Africa, examines how development stakeholders in Burkina Faso and Kenya negotiate owing development in their local context. Her current research project explores legacies of population control and human rights approaches to family planning in Ghana, the US, and Senegal. I will hand it over to Dr. Harper-Shipman. And I don't know if you need to share your screen at all, let me know. Okay, great.
No, I don't. Thank you so much, Layla, for that introduction. And thank you for the invitation to be here. So I know we don't have a lot of time, and I'm really interested in just kind of starting the conversation and continuing it through the Q&A today. But what I wanted to kind of talk about is just the broader context that surrounds my second research project that uniquely overlaps with a lot of the goals and objectives of this organization and the themes for today. So African women's emancipation, I believe, starts by decoupling their reproductive decisions from economic development and environmental outcomes, right? And so I think that a lot of times we have to be very clear by what we mean when we talk about population control, which is often just lumped into one generic category, instead of thinking about how it's taking different iterations and different forms across time and across space. So with different aims, right? So for example, original goals of purifying the white race using population control, using winning wars, right? The Cold War as a particular aim and a particular type of population control, economic development, controlling migration, and then, and more recently, ecological preservation, right? But what unifies all of these different aims and all of these different iterations of population control is the way in which women's bodies are always targeted, right? As the pliable means for achieving these various ends. So I want to think about how Michelle Murphy's book, The Economization of Life, pinpoints the academy, right? This kind of epistemic role that's situated in different disciplines like economics, population development, and demography as being responsible or providing the fodder for governments and for international organizations to create these different platforms and discourses for these more benign and genteel forms of population control, but especially as they've been reiterated under the guises of economic development and ecological preservation. So a lot of you may already be familiar with the International Conference on Population Development that took place in 1994 in Cairo. And this document has wide-reaching effects, especially since it was one of the first times that a lot of grassroots movements, feminist organizing from around the world, and especially the global South, were able to come in conversation with government, donors, et cetera, to advocate for access to reproductive health that was divorced from previous forms of population control, sterilization, eugenics, et cetera. But more importantly, one of the things that came out of the ICPD was the first kind of rights-based approach, right, or rights-based development approaches to family planning and reproductive health. However, the hidden history behind ICPD covers the way in which the US was still very much instrumental in framing the document, and especially the language, to still kind of lay the responsibility for a kind of reproductive responsibility back onto women, right? And couch within the language of the ICPD a latent neo-Malthusian discourse, right? That still says, even though women and men should have access to sexual and reproductive health resources, that they still have a responsibility to use those resources with future generations in mind, right? And because of this kind of open language, the way in which it's been implemented at different state levels has still been amenable to various forms of sterilization, various forms of, and again, population control, particularly with the ends toward ecological preservation, right? Another word we've come to use is ecofascism, right? And towards economic development. And so I like to draw on Chandra Mohanty's work, right? In that she talks about how, or she instructs us to engage the standpoint of population, or engage the standpoint, excuse me, of poor, indigenous, and third world Southern women for the most inclusive viewing of systemic forms of power, right? And I think one of the things we can think about when we talk about third world, right, is how these are not particularly geographically contained spaces, right? We can think of the third world as existing also within the so-called first world, right? And if we use that lens and move beyond the framing and move beyond this kind of geopolitical spatial understanding of third world and first world, then we see how we can also look at the reproductive conditions of Black women in the US, Indigenous women in the US, Chicano women in the US, to also understand how reproductive health and women's reproductive decisions have remained sutured to economic development and ecological preservation, right? And so thinking about privileging, right, the standpoints and the position of women and how they make reproductive decisions and how they often are navigating not just regulations from the government, right, in the form of abortion bans, et cetera, but also from a reproductive justice framework, they're also navigating ecological constraints, right, in the form of environmental racism. They're in having their breast milk poisoned through hyper exposure to pollutants, right, and chemicals and waste and water, et cetera, right? And this is evident in the Mother's Milk Project, right, that Indigenous women put forth and that Indigenous women started, especially in North Dakota, South Dakota, and across the US. But also thinking about, again, how they have to navigate economic constraints as well. They have to navigate police brutality, right? State carceral projects, right? And all of these things systemically impact women's ability to reproduce, right? As they're in their reproductive decisions, as those things have also been captured under the national and global imaginary for what is necessary to advance a particular type of white patriarchal heteronormative project. Right. And so my contribution today and what I'd like to talk about in the question and answer section is how we can begin to and shed light on the movements that work towards decoupling women's reproductive decisions from national economic development and ecological preservation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think it's, and I think often neglected, but very important component of our struggle to think about what it means, to think holistically about our emancipatory struggles, and that our relationship to the land and the ways in which our bodies are impacted by our relationship to the land is so important in that. So thank you very much for that intervention. And hopefully we'll get to talk more about that in Q&A. So next on the panel, we have Zethu Mdudo, sorry, please correct me if I say your name wrong, is a member of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azaina, a revolutionary mass Pan-African organization advocating and fighting for the liberation and emancipation of African people, based in the territory referred to as South Africa and the southern region of the African continent. For the PAC, return of the land is the most fundamental question with the rise of Azania and Africa at large. The Pan-African Congress of Azania is revolting against white monopoly, settler colonialism, and advocating for the rise of Africa. You have the floor. You can speak.
Oh, okay. Thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Zethu. Yeah, my name is Mdudo from the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azaina. This PAC from South Africa, which is Azaina. I'm here today to talk about emancipation of women is the precondition for the emancipation of men. I would like also to thank the panelists and to thank everyone who have partake in making this day a success, as we are still in the month of the in recognizing the women in international and in diaspora. So I would like to thank really for this. Okay, greetings, sons and daughters of the dispossessed African soil. It is a pleasure and honor to be part of this panel discussion today. I take this discussion as an opportunity to think solutions to our own problem. As Sobukwe would say, nothing about us without us as women. So we need to partake in every struggle, because we cannot allow a situation whereby our problems as women are discussed in our absentia. Which means we need to take a center stage in the liberation struggle. When we speak of the emancipation of women being central to the struggle for the whole emancipation of humanity, I think of words of Thomas Sankara in Women's Liberation and African freedom, saying women, whatever her social rank, was crushed not only within her own class, but by other races too. This was the case even for women who belonged to the exploiting classes. He further explains how this was the case even in the context of a so-called liberated Africa in feudalist relation. In feudal society, women were kept in a state of absolute dependence of men, justified by references to women's supposed physically and psychologically weakness, often seen as a defiled object, a primary agent of indistinction. Women, with few rare exceptions, were kept out of places of worship. In a capitalist society, the woman already morally and socially persecuted is also subjected economically, kept by the man. If she does not work, even then she works herself to death, but it is still the case when it comes to women. This abstract here explains the constant positioning of women as tools of history, proving to be a material and social base of oppression and exploitation, and their liberation is a necessity to that of the humankind. The relegation of the human status of women to that of a subject exploited socially and economically, one existing as a servitude to a system of oppression and exploitation, but also a sexual object existing for only reasons of appeasement of men constantly in need to be guarded, belonging to everyone but to herself. To liberate women is also to emancipate the male figure, being human again and affirming the humanity of another. As we fight with the world, we must be at constant war with the self and everything that stagnates the development of our humanness. The oppression of women is entrenched to that of mankind. You can never speak of the liberation of women in isolation to that of patriarchy, capitalism, imperialism, and colonialism. Women shall be emancipated with mankind when all forms of domination cease to exist. In the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azaina, we have always wanted to solve the problem created by oppression and exploitation, which detaches men from men and the environment in which they live. We have always understood that our struggle must be rooted in the need to yearn to solve the question of how men shall live together in peace, harmony with one another. In a world where women are unable to own land as resources for their benefits within an already dispossessed landlessness society, it is important that we fight not only for the ownership of land of women, but for that of all of the indigenous African people, but also crush the primitive cultural norms that seek to place in doubt the significance of women in society. So it is very important we as women to understand our role in the society and to take a center stage in the struggle, because in order for the whole Africa to be liberated, women must be liberated. And as we can note that women are oppressed culturally before they are oppressed economically, socially. You are oppressed because of you are representing a certain gender, you are a female. There are certain positions whereby you cannot view your voice because of your gender. And again, you are oppressed because you're an African child. Your land was dispossessed to you. You cannot breathe as a woman. So it's very important for us as women to understand our role in the struggle, that we are not only fighting for the empowerment of women, men as humankind must be liberated too. And our struggle should not be a male hatred movement, but it should be a movement that is going to liberate the whole Africa, because we have a common goal. We want Africa to be liberated as a whole, not women, not male, but a humankind. A man in a form of a humankind must be liberated. So as I close, I would like to put this to women who are here, that I also wish that as women we can understand our role in the struggle, and starting from today we can start practicing that. We can involve ourselves, because in order for the whole nation to be liberated, it needs us. If we can be head of our homes, do home chores, take care of our children, raise our children, what is stopping us as women then to run the country, to lead the whole Africa and the whole nation? It is up to us to change the mindset of the society. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Zethu. I'm really struck by the continuity of the comments between Zethu and Takiyah's focus on both our relationship to land and our relationship to our own bodies. And I really want to just bring out Zethu's comments about thinking about the sort of communal nature of our struggle, and uplift the point that she makes about our struggles for women's emancipation are not just about women's emancipation, but they are actually about the emancipation of our people. And it is impossible to do so without the emancipation of men. And so men must also understand the ways in which they are oppressed under these existing structures, right? Even by gender, right? Even by particular constructs of gender that tell them what masculinity looks like. So our next speaker is Ezili Danto. Ezili Danto is a human rights and international law attorney, an award-winning playwright, performance poet, and cultural activist. She was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and raised in the United States. She is a Haiti scholar and runs the Ezili Network, the Free Haiti Movement, the Haitian Lawyers Leadership Network, Ezili Designs, and Zili Dlo, I'm not sure if I said that right, Clean Water, Renewable Power, and Skills Transfer for Haiti. In 2018, Ezili was honored at the Connecticut Women Hall of Fame for her lifetime of justice and cultural advocacy works. So I believe Ezili is on the call, and so I will turn it over to you, sis.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, good. Honor and respect to everyone. Yes, so the title is How is the Oppression of Women has to stop before the oppression of men. I was born in Haiti and raised in the United States, and I've been practicing human rights law to stop the imperialism and the social injustice that's been happening to the people of Haiti. I will concentrate today a little bit on some points, and then perhaps whatever folks are interested in, we can touch on more about each of those points during the answer and question session. Haiti's women are the backbone of the local economy. They always have been. They wake up in the morning very, very early. This is probably the same way in Africa. They wake up 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock to walk to market, to bring their vegetables to sell. Without those Haiti women, the cities may not have vegetables and fruits. They work their lands. 70% of the informal economy are Haitian women. They are called Madame Sarah. And the Madame Sarah, you see them all over the streets with their wares. And they have a system of sisterhood. And in that system of sisterhood, they work together. They protect each other because the state does not protect the women in Haiti. The women are subject to various abuses, and I'm going to just name 4 or 5 that are systematic, that are heinous, and that are due to colonialism, imperialism, and patriarchy. Number 1, Haitian women are the most experimented women. Medical experiments are conducted on them. To give you an example, for the last 60 years, if the United States pharmaceutical companies want to test a new drug, they come to Haiti because we are the most defenseless. And of course, the women are at the bottom of being defenseless. So for instance, the pill, before it was used widely by white women and other women in the world, was experimented on Haitian women. And Norplant, Depo-Provera, I have stories of women who can't have children because of the infertility of these early experiments when those drugs were not FDA approved. There are women whose menstrual cycles would go on for years, or they would be given 1 cycle of Norplant and nobody came to take it off. And they didn't know to take it off. Number 2, we could say that as a result of 60 years of World Health Organization, Powell, and other non-governmental organizations experimenting for the big pharmaceuticals, Haitian women have the highest cervical cancer rate of all women. Number 2, they are raped without mercy. I'll give you an example. Rape is used as a tool of US imperialism. The United States, in order to maintain the control of the Black masses in Haiti, create death squads. This is not new or different or just about Haiti. It happens in the Congo. We have 6 million folks in genocide over there, and the women, of course, are taking the brunt of those death squads and those rape. The police, their own children, are taught to rape as a tool of control. One other thing to see is that in the last 17 years since the 2002 bicentennial coup d'etat against the first democratically elected president, I was the lawyer for Jean-Bertrand Aristide. The United States took him down twice. Each time they used death squads trained by US police, ISATAP, international police. And every time you have a military occupation, the rate of rape goes up about 15%. Since the UN came into Haiti, it has left us with what we call the minister babies. These are the children left behind of women who have been raped, children who have been raped, and the UN has not taken responsibility and for those sexual abuse and forced pregnancies. So those are so also the economic hitmen, otherwise known as the core group in Haiti. They are the ambassadors of 9 different Western nations. They are the ones that rule Haiti through fake elections, fake aid, and fake charity. They come from the nations of United States, led by United States, France, Canada, Brazil, Spain, and Germany, the AU, the OAS, and the UN. Those are what they call the core group. They maintain a puppet government. That puppet government is there to maintain their export economy, which means there is no local investment into the local economy. What that means is the Madame Sarah, the Haitian women, are left with the brunt of feeding the entire nation. But to add to their burden, there is something called free trade. And in that process of free trade, which is unfair trade, Miami rice is subsidized by big agriculture and they're dumped into Haiti. So when the Haitian women take their food to market, it's less expensive because the Miami rice, the Miami rice, the US rice is dumped into the market, and it makes, and it's so inexpensive because it's a lot of times given with subsidies for free. And so their food sovereignty has been destroyed. Haiti's food sovereignty has been destroyed. 30 years ago, Haiti fed itself. Today, all of it is imported. Finally, in terms of imperialism, cultural imperialism, forces these women to suffer in silence, because every other space there is a church of an NGO. And in that church of an NGO, they tell them that they're indigenous. Ezili, Danto, spirituality is devil, is not important, and that Jesus is important, and the afterlife is important. What they're suffering here and now, they must suffer with a smile and turn the other cheek. I say all this to say that my name is Ezili Danto, and I represent the Free Haiti movement, which I ask all of you to hashtag. It's finally, after 17 years of saying that Haiti has to be free, it's going viral because we are continuing to struggle against all of these various oppressions that I just gave you a glimpse of. Women obviously suffer more of those. Like I said, we have the minister babies, we have the food sovereignty issue, we have the fact that the informal economy of these women is not counted in the economic life of Haiti. Their lands is not counted as of value, the land that they grow their food, because our economists only count what the World Bank and the Western schools tell them to count as valuable. So until we have Black children of the Madame Sarah who will defend them, because the work, the food that they bring to the table is what raises these people who now have 5 PhDs and are working overseas and come home and look at the Madame Sarah as if they're not the ones that actually gave them the platform to lance them into the world. And so we have to, at Free Haiti, I lead a group of students, activists, all the grassroots for the last 17 years. And our job is to stop this persecution, to free Haiti, and to have the assets of our country be counted as valuable, so that we stop hearing that Haiti's the poorest in the Western Hemisphere and we live off of $2 a day, all of which are lies. If we had to live off of the US dollar, all of Haiti would perish tomorrow. We live off of the food that the Madame Sarah, the women, the backbone of Haiti's economy, bring to market, and the informal economy that's not given any value, but that creates the life that Haitians have. And the only aid we get is not the NGOs, it is the 3 billion and remittances that comes from the diaspora. Thank you very much for hearing us and listening to this presentation, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Ezili, for that important context. I think that we are well aware of the ways in which all of us as African people around the globe, and I think the people of the Americas and more broadly, are indebted to the work and struggle and legacies of Haiti and Haitian people, even in sort of very kind of traditional independent struggles in the Americas. And I think that we must always center both the historical contributions and the present experiences of the people of Haiti. So I really thank you for offering us that context. And I also am again struck by the continuity of concerns about particularly reproductive justice, which I think has come up across in some way or another across all 3 presentations that have happened so far, and of course questions of land. And so as we are moving into the Q&A, I want us to be thinking about the sort of interrelatedness of those issues. So the last speaker that we have is our Palestinian sister. And so in the same way that we in the All African People's Revolutionary Party, GC, like to or prefer to always involve our indigenous brothers and sisters in our struggles, we also understand the ways in which the apartheid state and the people of Palestine continue to be neglected and brutalized, and disenfranchised and oppressed and exploited by the US government and its other cronies. And so we want to give the floor of our final presentation to our sister Hadeel. Unfortunately, I do not have a bio for you. So if you are on the call, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself as you begin speaking, that would be great.
Hi everyone. First, I would like to thank all the speakers before me, and thank you, Layla, for the introduction. I'm Hadeel Shatara. I live in Palestine. I am the coordinator of Samidoun International Prisoners I am the coordinator of Samidoun, the International Prisoners Solidarity Network. Palestinian Prisoners Solidarity Network. I'll be speaking today about women in Palestine, but first of all, I would like to thank All African Women's Revolutionary Union and All African People's Revolutionary Party. So from Palestine, we would like to send our salutation to all the strugglers and female fighters in the world, for the African women, for the indigenous women, Arab women, and all women in the world who are fighting against imperialism and colonialism, patriarchy, and of course, the reactionary regimes. And to our comrades in South Africa who are still fighting for freedom, because we know that the African woman is actually the one who lit the fire of revolution all over Africa. Also for all the fighters of imperialism and American colonialism in Haiti. So the title of the session was The Emancipation of Women is a Precondition for the Emancipation of Men. But actually, the emancipation of women is a precaution for a precondition for freedom in general. In whatever fight that we go through, the emancipation of women is actually the base in any community, in any fight that we're going through. Women's struggle in general had begun hundreds of years ago, and the road to freedom and equality was not and still not an easy one, but we as women were born a fighter. We were born fighters, and this is what we saw from the speakers before me. And our joint struggle against colonialism, imperialism is an ongoing issue for almost 500 years or more now. So, and it actually shaped our culture, it shaped our history as people around the world who are struggling now against colonialism and who are at the heart of the struggle of women in Palestine, in Africa, in South America, Asia, and everywhere. So for the Palestinian women's fight against colonialism and patriarchy now, it had started many, many years ago. And like women in Africa, we did not only carry weapons in this fight against colonialism towards freedom, but also women were the ones who carried the economic burden in Palestine. They were the ones who started the literacy programs during the Intifada or before the Intifada. So women had carried the whole cause itself, and they did not take a back seat in fighting toward freedom, and in no matter what case that we're fighting for social struggle and for the political struggle, and they're connected. Today, we have more than 35 Palestinian female prisoners in the occupation and the Zionist occupation jails. So we have, they are women in the front line fighting the occupation in Palestine. Today, this is the month of women and land in Palestine, and these two things are connected, because freedom for women means the freedom for land here, and you cannot separate between the social struggle and the political struggle. For the past 30 years, things has changed a bit in Palestine since the start of a new path in the Palestinian cause, a path where we were revolutionary, where we were fighting against the colonial Zionist entity, to a path where a Palestinian authority was formed, an agreement was signed, an agreement for what so-called fake peace was signed with the Israeli Zionist side. And this had led to a recreation of the whole situation. It recreated a system that is based on patriarchy and a reactionary regime that was created inside Palestine. Women outside Palestine, the refugee women, has suffered economically, socially, and culturally, as well as politically, because she was a lot of families were actually living in refugee camps outside Palestine, and now there is around 8 million Palestinians living outside Palestine. So we're not talking about the suffering of Palestinian women within the Palestinian map, but we're also talking about the suffering of Palestinian women all over the places. In refugee camps in Lebanon, in Jordan, Syria, and now spread in Europe, United States, and everywhere. What the BA has created here is it became an agent for the occupation, and this system had created more oppression against women because this new authority has decided for the past 30 years that women's struggle and social struggle is not a necessity, so they put it in a back seat. So our fight as a woman had increased. We're not only fighting the occupation now, but we're also fighting the authorities, the reactionary authorities that was created under the current circumstances. So what we're working on now, as what we're trying to work on, is an alternative path, a revolutionary alternative path where women can take the lead and take their normal role, because we have to fight back and take a role back to actually attain freedom. So this is a project that we're working about. We're gathering Palestinian women from all over the places where they're living, and we're opening this discussion about what is the feminist point of view that we want to see in the struggle. What is the path that us as women must take in our fight towards freedom as Palestinian women? This is basically what we're facing. We're not only facing the occupation, who's confiscating our life literally. We're confiscating air in Palestine. So, and we're also fighting reactionary regimes. We're fighting for for women who are living in refugee camps. We're fighting for women who are inside prisons now. So, what we need today, from what all the speakers started talking about, is a global, popular, anti-imperialist front, because you cannot fight imperialism and reactionary regimes, colonialism, or patriarchy unless we all gather together and we start our joint struggle program or front. So this front needs to be built on a popular level between all women in the world to be able to attain something, which is freedom, of course. This is in general, and I'm ready to answer any question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And also thank you for the corrective that the emancipation of women is a precondition for liberation and freedom in general. We have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A, and I, as moderator, don't want to take up time. I want people to be able to interact, but I am, if panelists, you are welcome to ask questions of one another. Members of the audience, you're welcome to unmute yourselves. And I just want to repose the question that Hadeel posed, which I think is a question for all of us, is what is the feminist point of view that we want to see in our struggle? I think that that is an interesting place to begin for our conversation. But again, anyone in the audience is welcome to comment or ask a question or intervene, and as well as the panelists. You should be able to unmute yourself to do so.
This is Elder Ajabu. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I truly support women taking their rightful place in the world order of things. But my question that I would like for the ladies to interact with is equal treatment the same treatment? Do you want the same thing that I, as a man, there's got to be a distinction in the genders. So again, is equal treatment the same treatment? Can you interact with that, or do I need to say more?
No, can I jump in? So I think that in some respects goes back to Hadeel's point, and then that which Layla circulated back to, which is what type of feminist politic we want to see. And I think the goal is justice and not equity, right? And so in some respects, this is an attempt to not delve into the difficult waters of thinking about, cisgender anatomy versus male, gender anatomy, but thinking about how do we take into account the histories of dispossession, expropriation of labor, control over women's bodies, right? And it's making me think, for example, of the reproductive justice quote that says, when you control a woman's body, you control entire communities, right? And so if we start from that position, and then we think about how the solution then is justice, right? Which means it accounts for the centuries of dispossession, right? The centuries of oppression that led to the point that we even need to have a conversation today, that we've been having these conversations, as I think Hadeel has said, right, over and over and over. And so equity, right, also assumes that the position that men are in is one that we would also like to achieve without questioning. And I think the whole point of this conversation is to also acknowledge that men are also disenfranchised, dispossessed, right, have their labor expropriated, et cetera. But when we think about what it means to emancipate the woman, right, and moving towards a position of justice that accounts for these different histories and the ways in which our bodies and our positionalities have become caught up in and used in service to these larger structures like capitalism, like patriarchy, like white privilege, right? Like heteronormativity, then we start to imagine a world where everyone can still live within their particular identity, but have relative access that accounts for the centuries, again, of dispossession that led us to that point, if that makes sense. So to just kind of reframe that, I think the goal is justice, right? And not equity or equality, right? Which also highlights how men also need to be emancipated as well.
Thank you.
Can I jump in? Okay, I think we have to ask this question from a different perspective and look at it differently, because we cannot consider that men around the world today are liberated within the system that is created by imperialism. So when we fight as women for equality, we fight for equality for everyone. And that's not based on gender itself, because equality has a wide meaning. And fighting for our freedom and fighting for our right as humans, we're all equal as humans. So if we start from that point of view and we look at equality from that point of view, we would actually think of this question in a different way and think that, yes, justice is required as well as equality for all of us as humans in the world. And this is part of the ongoing fight.
Also,
Thank you.
And also in the All African People's Revolutionary Party, we talk about the oppression of people. So we say that women are confronted with a triple oppression: race, class, and gender. And our men are also confronted with a double oppression, which for the most part is race and class. And so this is why we take a special opportunity to look at and focus on that triple oppression that women internationally are confronted, especially women of color are confronted with. So I just wanted to bring that in.
Good morning. If I may, and I know that my lens is very different being from the United States. And so a lot of our differently perceived. But I don't know in this situation when we're literally pursuing humanity and justice that has to be, that there's a deference with gender. And that you have to, we all know that until we're all free, none of us are free. And so within that faction, we have to look at it as a whole. When I talk about free Palestine, I'm not saying free Palestinian women or Palestinian men. I'm saying free all the people. Same thing when I am talking about of justice. And I know that the justice lens does look different. I understand the privilege that many of us in the United States carry. But when we are advocating for liberation, I think liberation also is not gender specific. I don't know if that actually responds to your question, Elder, but that's just my perspective and how many of us, I serve on the Women's March board, Women's March National here in the United States, and we work with different coalitions. And I'm also part of the Black Lives Matter Frontlines Liberation Group. And so we're fighting for everyone. And I don't care how they identify, because I also understand that there's a spectrum of gender when we look at that, and I honor that as well. Ashe.
Thank you for that intervention. The only thing I would say in response to that is not, I disagree with nothing you said. I think the only intervention I would make is that because of the ways in which the particularities of class, race, and gender oppression have taken on lives of their own, I would not necessarily advocate for the primacy of the question of gender, but I do think it has to be, what do you call it? It has to be acknowledged in a very clear and straightforward way. And so a part of this question that Hadeel asked, what type of feminist intervention do we want? I think that is about calling attention to the fact that while we experience oppression based on our national status, our racial status, our class status, even within and in between groups, we experience a level of gender oppression too. And so I think that we have to keep those things at the forefront when we are talking about what our struggles actually are. And so that's the only thing I would add to that. Not that necessarily the question is the question of gender needs to take precedent over any of these other questions, but that we must always give each of these shared attention because of the ways in which they've taken on their own lives. I don't know if anyone else, we can have about 4 more minutes. And so I want to make sure anyone else who either from the panel wants to respond, or if anyone else wants to add to that conversation or ask a new question, you're welcome to do so.
I might have something to say about, maybe it's my misunderstanding of the question, but something about that note sort of hit me in the wrong way, because this idea that are we as women looking to be equal to men? I don't know if that hit anyone, but that's what I got from the question. And I'd like to just address that part of what I got from the question. Whether we're looking for equality in the way of men, I'm not. I think that's a very patriarchal question. I think that women.
That wasn't the question, sis.
I'm sorry. Tell me the question again.
Yeah, the question is equal treatment the same treatment? I'm not questioning that you should be equal. I'm talking about can you treat a woman as you treat a man equally, or can you treat a woman as you treat a man equally, understanding the differences in our gender? I'm all for, especially when you're talking about jobs, politics, but a woman is not a man and a man is not a woman. You can't give a man the same treatment that you give a woman, nor can you give a woman the same treatment that you give a man. It's not about equality. Please, no. Hopefully,
Okay, so I
I'm
actually
being
did
clear, and if
get,
I
I did get,
miscommunicated, please
yes.
excuse me.
Okay, I actually did get your question, I guess. Maybe I repeated it wrong, but yeah, you hit me wrong. And let me say why. I just explained, I believe, that women in Haiti are persecuted to the point where their economic contribution, all of their contribution is destroyed and devalued. Are they looking to be treated as men? They're women. But if that means that one woman can do something, whatever a woman can do, whatever her desire and her skill set might allow her to do, my job is as an advocate is to push for that woman, whatever that might be, regardless of what society might think of that role. And so that's my answer. It has gender has nothing to do with her skills. And for me, I just think that when we're dealing with a question of genocide, equal treatment is the same treatment. It sounds to me like a more sort of bourgeois question, because we're trying to fight for life right now.
I appreciate your words, but sis, rest assured that if a woman is doing the same thing that a man is doing, then same treatment is apropos. But as you know, I'm a military man, and some women can do some things that men do in the military. Now, if I was a female and I'm a Vietnam veteran, I wouldn't want to go to war. If the perimeter is breached, then everybody, all hands on deck.
Let's stop there. You're not a female.
Yeah. So the other intervention I want to also make is that so there are multiple conversations that are happening right now. One conversation that I think the vast majority of the panelists are talking about is the historical construction of the category of woman and how that category exists, right? And so there's a comment in the chat from Sharice Burton-Selly, however, the rights that have historically been afforded to men, but not women, given the patriarchal specifications of our societies, women should be afforded those rights and modes of access. Is one aspect of the struggle for liberation. I also hear in your question and even in your subsequent responses, a kind of physical gender essentializing about what women are capable of. And I think that even our own histories demonstrate that we are capable of all of those things. If we look at the history of Eritrean women battling for their own liberation, if we look at the history of Palestinian women battling for their own liberation. So
and without the women, there would not have been the Haitian Revolution.
Absolutely.
The only successful revolution that, took out white supremacy and so forth, colonization. Well without gun guitar, gun toya defile, I would not be here.
Absolutely.
And the same goes for South Africa and Palestine. But the point is that I want to make clear here, because what you're asking is the system that has created all this patriarchy is itself the problem. That's why when you was trying to give an example, you went to a war example. This war example actually answers, we can answer it by itself, because this is the system that we're trying to fight. So we're fighting the whole system that is creating war, that is allowing all these attacks. And that is, military itself is a question today, because we are fighting for freedom. We're fighting against colonialism. And this is a system that is created by imperialism and colonialism. So if we look at it from that point of view, we'll know that the class system that is created among all over the countries, we can see that all women are sharing the same struggle. They're sharing, most of the issues are the same, no matter where you live in the world. There's a system, there's a hierarchy in the system, and this hierarchy needs to be broken. Absolutely. And this is the fight that we as people everywhere need to fight for. So
no argument there.
And so what I want to say to that, though, is that I think this comes back to the point that everyone on the panel has also made, and even the title of the program, which Hadeel gave us the corrective for, is that if we understand the emancipation of women is a precondition for freedom and liberation, then when we think about what the emancipation of women actually looks like, it makes us question all of our underlying assumptions about who women are, what we are capable of, and how we are involved in our own struggles. And it also makes us question the ways in which we have constructed masculinity, right? So I want to, because we have a second panel and we have a little sort of intermediary session, what I would like to do at this moment is ask, I did not do this at the beginning, but I want to now that there is, what do you call it, a critical mass of people, we would like to stay connected with everyone who is participating today. If you are willing, please drop your name and email in the chat so that we can follow up in communication with you all. I also want to add that the recording of this session will be available on the A-APRP-GC's website at the conclusion of this programming today. And so you all are free to continue to interact with one another in the chat. We have about a 17-minute video presentation, a cultural presentation. All of the panelists from panel 1 are invited, more than welcome to stay on for the second panel and hopefully be a part of the continuing Q&A in the second panel. But right now I will play a video. We'll have a brief intermission, but please continue to interact in the chat. You do not have to go anywhere, but you're welcome to turn your videos off and do whatever you need to do personally in this in between time. Thank you.
Are we going to take a screen capture shot right now or later? Before people leave now.
I can, so if people are willing, just for the sake of us collecting this data, if you could turn your camera on briefly and I will take a couple of screenshots of the participants. If you do not want to, obviously you are not compelled to do so in any way, shape, fashion, or form, but there are about 3 screens, 3 panels, so I'm gonna do all 3 of them really quickly. All right, so first screen, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. The rest of the screens, people don't have their cameras on, so I think I won't bother with those. All right, thank you all so much. So I'm gonna share the video, but like I said, please continue to interact in the chat and I'll share the video and then we'll be back to begin our next panel at 1:30. Thank you.
Thank you all.
my people, open your eyes and answer the call of the drum. Freddie Mo, Samara Machel has come. Maputo, home of the brave, our nation will soon be as one. Freddie Mo, Samara Machel as one. Who have given their lives, praises to thee, husband.
Ulindlela pema mkopozi emnyana wami kelele uyashada namhlanje ulindlela wena manyauza suba nomona nyana wami uthathile bengingazi yombolo makoti unyana wami ujongile besithanda wahathele uzezosesi uzemthwadwe nathathisa namhlanje bebesithi unyana wami liso bebesithi angeke achaze kulindlela ulindlela emampoposi emnyana wami elele uyashada ulindlela manyauza suba nomona nyana wami uthathile bengingazi yombolo makoti unyana wami ujongile besithanda wahathele uzezosesi uzemthwadwe nathathisa namhlanje bebesithi unyana wami liso bebesithi angeke achaze ulindlela emampoposi ulindlela elungoza ulindlela emampoposi ulindlela
The children got a letter from their master. It said no more Xhosa, Sotho, no more Zulu. Refusing to comply, they sent an answer. That's when the policeman came to the rescue. Children were flying, bullets dying, the mothers screaming and crying. The fathers were working in the city. The evening news brought out all the publicity. Just a little atrocity deep in the city. Somewhere to blue. at the door. What's the man without?
Mississippi, goddamn, it's our last tune. We had some request for it. Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn. Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. Everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn. Can't you see it? I know you can feel it. It's all in the air. I can't stand the pressure much longer. Somebody say a prayer. Alabama's got me so upset, and Governor Wallace has made me lose my rest. Everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn. Hound dogs on my trail.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you got it.
School children sitting in jail.
Oh, I sent you
Black
a
cat
text.
crossed my path.
So
I think every day is gonna be my last.
Okay, so they have a really good lineup of speakers.
Lord have mercy on the land of mine. We all gonna get it in due time. I don't belong here. I don't belong there. I've even stopped believing in prayer. Don't tell me, I'll tell you. Me and my people just about do. I've been there, so I know they keep on saying, go slow. That's just the trouble. Washing the windows.
And this is a drum that is usually only played by men traditionally. Pero las mujeres de Acknowledgement decidimos tocarlo en representación de todas las mujeres del mundo. But the women of Acknowledgement, we decided that we were also going to play it in representation of all women in the world. has been named Cultural Living Patrimony of the state of Miranda because she has been dedicated for most of her life, not only to teach children in the different schools of the area how to play this instrument called the kitiplas, but also how to build it.
Okay, perfect timing. It is 1:30. So we are going to move into the second half of our programming today, women fighting for socialism, social justice, and revolution. I will not be moderating this panel. This will be the responsibility of our sister Moremi. I also just want to mention that I am listed to go first on this particular panel, but I will go last to make sure, since I've already had plenty to say today. I will cede my time and I will just offer my remarks as closing. And I will also, when we come to the sister from the Federation of Cuban Women, I will be showing a video for her. So you can just pass that to me when you're ready, Moremi. You can have the floor.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters, comrades. Good afternoon. So we move on. I'm feeling that, you know, people are getting a lot out of the sessions. And I also want to join with Sister Layla in thanking all of our presenters thus far. Before we go into this next session, which is entitled Women Fighting for Socialism, Social Justice, and Revolution, I just want to say a few brief things about the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, which are the one of the primary sponsors of this event. And I just want to say a little bit about the brief history of it, very, very brief. It's important that we say in COFA, we reach back and fetch it and find out where we came from to arrive where we are today. So we're going to look at the 30-year history of the A-AWRU, the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, which is the women's wing of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And the A-AWRU, like the A-APRP, was born out of the political and ideological and political struggles for liberation of Africa and all indigenous people over hundreds of years of colonialism, neo-colonialism, and imperialism, where African women have always played a critical and important role. So prior to the founding of our A-AWRU, the party held many discussions within our circles. We were struggling in our chapter meetings, in our committee meetings, and so forth. And so at the central committee level, discussions was held regarding the struggle and the role of the African woman and whether the A-APRP should consider having a women's union, a women's wing. So in 1978, a formal call was made to do research. You have to always start with your research, present papers, hold seminars, etc., to properly analyze this question of the role and the contribution of African women within the African Revolution. So the result was the formation of the A-AWRU. And there's no doubt that the birth of the A-AWRU was a logical historical development and consequence of the struggle of our people, as probably was the case with many of our sister wings, sister organizations that have spoken thus far. So the A-AWRU was born November 1980, where the masses of women in the AARP and the Central Committee mandated the All African Women's Revolutionary Union as a women's wing of the A-APRP. I just want to talk about the fact that we had three major aspects of our political line, and I'm just going to mention the third one, which relates to what we're doing here today. And the third goal was to work jointly with revolutionary women worldwide through the AAPRP towards the accomplishments of scientific socialism. So that's just a little bit about the A-AWRU. And if you're interested in finding out more about the A-AWRU or the A-APRP-GC, put something in the chat room, we'll contact you. All right, at this time, we are very, very pleased to introduce the first speaker of this panel, which is Sister Fravia Marquez Silva. She is a career diplomat at the Foreign Ministry of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela since 2002. She is a graduate in foreign relations at the Central University of Venezuela. She is a member of the group of diplomats who returned, I say, to the Venezuelan homeland from the embassy in Washington, D.C. back in January 2019. She is a charge d'affaires of Venezuela in Jamaica and the commissioner for international relations and social struggles of the platform of the Anti-Imperialist Working Class, PCOA. And she's also a member of the Afrodescent Cumbe Internacional. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Sister Fravia Marquez, who will be representing the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela, Bolivarian, let me put it like Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Sister Marquez, you there, sis?
Thank you, Cheryl.
My name is Marini.
Oh, Maureen, sorry.
Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite
Give us a minute, give us a minute.
Just
a minute.
Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och pushar på och smeker med motståndet vi leker. Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och springer runt och creepar och motståndet vi slipar.
Melissa, turn off your...
Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och pushar på.
Thank you. We're sorry about that.
No worries.
We'll have our...
That happens. She's been removed, or that person has been removed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We anticipated that.
You.
The struggle continues.
Yeah.
Yo, cuando yo
Thank you.
no veo. I want to now.
You're with us.
Okay. So thank you everyone. Yeah, we're used to that kind of things. Always. And the sabotage, you know, we're used to that. So, well, my name is Fravia Marquez. Thank you for having me here today. Representing the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And as you said, I wear several hats. I am a diplomat, but also I am an Afro activist, and I work in this platform you mentioned from workers, which means that I work also with unions and grassroots movements in Venezuela and around the world. And I think this is a common characteristic for all women here and everywhere. We always wearing several hats, and that's why it is so important and visible our role in society. Well, regarding my country, as maybe some of you already know, we had the luck and we pay our price in history. So we had President Chavez bringing the issue, he brought the issue, if you want to call it issue, of women and the role in society. He put women in the front of the struggle, recognizing all the effort and all the value we add to society and to all the areas in Venezuela and in the world, but especially in Venezuela. He always said that the face of the revolution was a woman, still a woman. And he was not only speaking about the, you know, like in a speech, he was able to canalize that, to tune that into actual achievements for the women in Venezuela. We started having a bank for the women's. We have a ministry of the women in Venezuela. We have laws. And we have spaces in all the executive branch, but also the legislative. For instance, recently we held legislative elections last year in December. Some of the people here was there as official observers, and 40% of the women in our National Assembly got elected. We're 40%. We are chairing committees, like the Committee of Foreign Affairs, the vice chair is a woman. The first vice president of the National Assembly, so the second one in the chain of command, is a woman. And there, like so in all the other powers. But certainly, that also brings us to a big issue inside Venezuela, because when you have so much support or recognition, sometimes you get used to that. And you are in danger of putting aside the struggle, or sometimes uncomfortable with the achievements or the spaces you already are given, because you want it, but you already have them. And that's the moment we're living in Venezuela, especially after the sanctions that coming from the United States mainly, but also from the European Union. The role of the women in Venezuela after these sanctions hit it hard, especially after 2017, I will say that they were increased, especially in the financial sector, and also the effects of the pandemic, have put our country again in a road we separated before. It has bring some underdevelopment to the high level of life or way of life we were before, but also have bring us together again in the struggle. And I can say that's something that we are working now as a woman in Venezuela in general. In some cases, even across party, not only the political party PSUV, which is the government party, I'm part of that party too, but also in other parties that are not necessary from, sympathize with the government, is the issue of femicide. In Venezuela now, that is the main topic since several years ago, I would say like more than 4. That's the new struggle here. We are trying to get laws, especially designed for that. We are visualizing it, trying to visualize it, to put it on the upfront again. Because as we were discussing before, when the gentleman was talking about maybe different of gender, our societies, especially in Latin America, like with racism, which is very silent here. And that's why you will find people that would say it doesn't exist because we're mestizos. I won't go to that debate right now. We can talk later. But it's the same sometimes with women. And maybe in Latin America, it goes less noticed than in other countries. Like empowering the women, like learn education to learn when you are being discriminated, when you're being sexualized. That's something that is being not reborn, but being rediscovered, I would say, in Latin America. And Venezuela being a country that comes from the oil industry, we have a very special situation in that sense, in all the senses, but in that sense too, especially. Why? Because we work for a socialism of the 21st century. We are building the revolution constantly. We're struggling, but we still have a very capitalistic point of view in a lot of things. And sometimes people that is in the revolution and is loyal, they don't notice. And I'm sure this happens around the world in several countries, but especially in Venezuela, it's something, it's like cohabit both models. It's like they are living together. And all the time you have to go check back and forth, because it's like other sisters said before, like the way we raise our men, our boys, our children, how we also keep, Oh, sorry. I think my jacket's interfering. You can listen better now. Thank you. So it's the way also, if you are coming from such a capitalistic influence because you are an oil country since the 40s, since the 60s, the 70s, you have all that media culture influence. You're the first country in the northern part of South America. You receive everything first. You are very fashionable. You are known because you're supposed to have the most beautiful women in the world, because most of people before Chavez knew Venezuela only because of oil and because Miss Universe. There is a lot of weight on the backs of the women in Venezuela because of that history, and also because of the Latino machista history that most of women still put in the education of the children without knowing it. So I wanted to make a very brief presentation, like an, opening several issues so we can discuss later about the situation right now in Venezuela and the struggle we have and this moment of transition, because revolutions are always changing. We cannot say we're still there, especially with, inflation is very bad in Venezuela, and women are always up front of everything. As Sherry was commenting before, and my sister Sherry in the chat, there's no revolution where women didn't have a main role. It's only that we didn't appear maybe in the books. In the case of Venezuela, one of the policies has been also that since Chavez was president, and with President Nicolas Maduro too. We are bringing up the Venezuelan women, for instance, that fight in the independence, especially the Afro women, because as other sisters said, of course, we suffer because of gender, because of race and all of that, but also that opens other avenues to keep the struggle. That will be all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sister. Thank you again. I was just making a few notes. I appreciated your comments, and it shows us that the revolution in Venezuela is continuing to unfold. Many of us are subjected to like a lot of misinformation, false truths about the struggle as it exists in other parts of the world. And so your words and your information is giving us more insight into the real deal, into what's really happening in the revolutionary struggles that continue throughout the world. So with that being said, again, I want to remind people, if you have some questions, put your questions into the chat room, as well as you'll get a chance to ask them at the very end when we have question and answers. Okay, at this time, you've seen this person. She's been on the chat room. You see me shuffling these papers everywhere, but she's made like a lot of positive contributions, and she hasn't even been on to speak yet. At this time, I'm going to bring on Dr. Sharice Burden-Stelly. Okay, she is a 2020-2021 visiting scholar in the Race and Capitalism Project at the University of Chicago. Okay, she is an assistant professor of Africana Studies and of Political Science at Carleton College. She is a member of the Black Alliance for Peace Coordinating Committee. She is a scholar of critical Black studies, political theory, political economy, and intellectual history. Sister Burden is the co-author with Gerald Horn of the W.E.B. Du Bois, A Life in American History. She is currently working on a book manuscript entitled Black Scare, Red Scare, Anti-Blackness, Anti-Communism, and the Rise of Capitalism in the United States. Make sure you guys try to check those out now. And finally, Burden-Stelly's published work appears in journals, including The Small Axe, Souls, Du Bois, Review, Socialism and Democracy. That was a Du Bois Review, I'm sorry. Socialism and Democracy, International Journal of Africana Studies, and the C.L.R. James Journal. Her public scholarship can be found in venues including Monthly Review, Boston Review, and Black Perspectives. She is the host of the Last Dope Intellectual Podcast. Look for it, check it out, which is part of the Black Power Media Network and the co-editor of the Black Agenda Review, which is part of the news outlet of the Black Agenda Report. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask Dr. Sharice Burden-Stelly to please take the mic, sister. By the way, let me put this in. Hold on. Let me put this in. I mentioned it, but I want to emphasize it now. She's here representing the Black Alliance for Peace at the University of Chicago, Race and Capitalism. All right, go right ahead, sister.
Thank you so much. I am so embarrassed by that long bio. It was completely unnecessary. I'm so sorry, y'all. But I'm so thrilled to be here today, and I want to thank the A-APRP-GC and my dear comrade, Dr. Layla Brown Dr. Layla Brown for having me here today. So I'm going to offer some brief remarks about historical engagement with African women's triple exploitation and oppression, with a particular focus on Black women in the United States in the 20th century. And so I think my paper will primarily be most useful thinking through political education and how we might understand the multiple ways in which Black women have been oppressed historically. So radical Black thinkers have argued that the conjuncture of imperialism, white supremacy, and capitalist exploitation have positioned Black people as an especially oppressed people, subjected to extra demands over and above that those of the white working class. The African Blood Brotherhood co-founder Otto Weiswood explained that in the first half of the 20th century, Black people experienced a combination of repression, violence, and surplus value extraction that reduced them to a servile class subjected to lynching, peonage, and segregation. As such, they were rendered social outcasts at the very bottom of the capitalist society. The Black radical Harry Haywood argued that this brutal system of racial hierarchy exacerbated worker-based oppression and resulted in Black relegation to the worst forms of employment, the most dangerous and unhealthy work conditions, and paltry, unequal wages. Black folks were imprisoned in plantation systems in the South through sharecropping, tenancy, and land dispossession, and were extremely marginalized in, if not excluded outright from, textile and other industries. Additionally, Blacks were denied even the most basic civil rights and protection by law that would allow them to contest these conditions of exclusion and economic violence. We Charge Genocide, the seminal petition submitted to the United Nations by the organization, the Civil Rights Congress in 1951, put this peculiar suffering of US Black people onto the international stage. It meticulously documented the past and present subjection of Black people to, quote, institutionalized oppression through constant and invariable discrimination in employment, low wages, enforced living in ghettos, denial of equality of accommodation and services, as well as equality in courts, end quote. The position further argued that their super exploitation was sustained by genocidal terror, white supremacist law, and the drive of monopoly capitalists for super profits. An important development regarding super exploitation came through the advancement of triple exploitation and oppression as a means of analyzing Black women's particular experiences. In 1975, the Black Women's United Front—
no, you didn't.
In 1975, the Black Women's United Front in 1975, the Black Women's United Front proclaimed that the triple exploitation and oppression of Black women demanded the smashing of monopoly capitalism and a move toward a socialist revolution. They were building on insights of radical Black women from the 1930s. In 1936, Louise Thompson employed triple exploitation and oppression to explain that Black women's oppressive relationship to the mode of production was based on their race, gender, and subordination in the labor market. Black militants Marvell Cook and Ella Baker published an article the previous year in which they studied super exploitation as related to Black domestic workers. Cook and Baker explained that the conjuncture
Jim,
of
why do you
racialized—
drink all the fucking beer?
Sorry. Sorry.
Oh, shoot,
Okay.
is my mic on?
Okay. Sorry. So Cook and Baker explained that the conjuncture— Let me start from here. Okay, Black militants Marvell Cook and Ella Baker published an article the previous year in which they studied super exploitation as it related to Black domestic workers. Cook and Baker explained that the conjuncture of racialized womanhood and structural poverty, deeply intensified by the Great Depression, forced domestic workers to pauperize their labor for the abysmal wage of less than 30 cents an hour. Here, labor exploitation was gendered insofar as domestic work was conventional women's work, and it was racialized insofar as Blackness fitted this group of women for low wage, unprotected, and contingent labor. Patterson, Cook, and Baker proved that the contours of exploitation could only be understood when race, gender, labor, and material conditions were taken into account. In 1940, radical Black activist intellectual Esther V. Cooper took on triple exploitation and oppression from a different angle. In her master's thesis, she argued that given the triple exploitation and oppression of Black domestics, their organization and unionization was essential to socialist revolution. Excluding them from trade unions and the organized labor movement not only marginalized a key demographic of the proletarian struggle, but also reified Black women's super exploitation by excluding them from labor protections afforded to other classes of workers. So in other words, it propped up the labor aristocracy. The argument that Black women are unorganizable was based on false and anti-Black assumptions that continue the social stigma and vulnerability of this class of workers. For the communist luminary Claudia Jones, Black women's super exploitation was revealed through their unique relationship to the mode of production, the labor market, and the social relations that reduced them to the status of absolute other. In 1949, in her 1949 article, An End to the Neglect of the Problems of the Negro Woman, Jones concluded that the empowerment of Black women should be prioritized because given their special form of subjection, they were the most militant and therefore the most essential to socialist revolution. She forcibly argued that Black women's responsibility as partial or sole breadwinners, their treatment in the labor market, and their active participation in the social, political, and economic life of the Black community, in other words, their experience of super exploitation and their tireless efforts to eradicate its conditions, rendered them the real active forces.
Mom, do we have any more toilet paper?
The organizers and the workers.
Oh, shit.
Okay. The intellectual ground cleared by analyses of triple exploitation and oppression in previous decades was sown by radical Black women's organizations like the Third World Women's Alliance and the Combahee River Collective, founded in 1974. Echoing Esther V. Cooper, Maxine Williams and Fran Beal pointed out that Black women continue to be overrepresented in non-unionized and service-based occupations, which transformed them into a supply of surplus and cheap labor that was remunerated terribly, denied workforce advancement, restricted to the most exploitative forms of labor, and excluded from or subordinated in unions. Like Louise Thompson and Claudia Jones, Williams and Beal used the triple exploitation and oppression of Black women to expound the specificities of their super exploitation. Along with being economically exploited as a worker, being used as a source of cheap labor because she is a female, and being treated even worse because she is Black, Williams explained the double exploitation of Williams explained the double exploitation of Black women in the form of them working in somebody else's private household and then having to take care of their own households. Beal added that Black women were forced to work in white people's kitchens because Black men were often excluded entirely from the labor market, and these material demands resulted in turmoil within Black family structures and the disruption of Black relationships. Moreover, Black women had the burden of caring for white folks' children before tending to their own, a structural reality that led to the ideological denigration of Black women who were misconstrued as the arbiters of Black family dysfunction. It's important to note that Black men also contributed to the analysis of Black women's triple exploitation and oppression. In a 1968 essay entitled Black Women and Birth Control, for example, Julius Lester offered a Black male perspective on the ways that the imposition of motherhood gendered Black women's super exploitation. He argued that the Black militant rejection of birth control and the romanticization of Black motherhood enslaved Black women to their bodies and foreclosed their possibility of being a total revolutionary. Moreover, reducing Black women's role in liberation to reproduction eliminated half of the Black community's revolutionary potential. There is power in numbers, he wrote, but that power is greatly diminished if a lot of those numbers have to sit at home and change diapers instead of being on the front lines where most of them would rather be. Lester's position aligned with that of the Third World Women's Alliance, which centered issues of birth control, abortion, and forced sterilization to insist that Black women must have control over their bodies. These thinkers maintained that revolutionaries should empower those who have been historically forced into motherhood and reproduction to decide whether or not they wanted children. These thinkers illuminated how gender provided a deeper understanding of super exploitation by revealing the divergent social effects of Black men's and women's different relationship to the mode of production. The Combahee River Collective added heterosexism to racism, class oppression, sexism, and elitism as the central components of triple exploitation and oppression. This organization saw as its intellectual and historical task the development of a praxis that challenged the interlocking systems of domination that particularly plagued women of color and that built upon the historical struggle of Black women against the antagonisms of white male rule. Moreover, the Combahee River Collective coined the term identity politics to denote a, quote, repugnant, dangerous, threatening, and therefore revolutionary set of discursive and political practices that clarified the multiple forms of exploitation that precluded liberation. Like their anti-capitalist foremothers, this group of militants believed that socialism was imperative to the eradication of super exploitation because, quote, work must be organized for the collective benefit of those who do the work and create the products, and not for the profit of bosses. Material resources must be equally distributed among those who create the resources, end quote. However, such a revolution must be predicated upon an analysis of triple exploitation and oppression to ensure that the specific class position of Black women was accounted for. So to conclude, I think that this framework of triple exploitation and oppression is very, very important to help us understand contemporary and actually existing phenomena today, such as the feminization of labor and poverty, the devaluation of care work, the overrepresentation of women, specifically racialized women in unremunerated, informal, and flexibilized work, the preponderance of Black and other racialized women in essential work, and you know, work deemed essential in this COVID moment. And so we talk a lot about intersectionality. I want us to bring triple oppression and exploitation back on the table in terms of how we understand our material conditions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sister. Thank you so much. At a Black Alliance for Peace protest in front of the Haitian consulate in Chicago back on March 15th, that organization came to the conclusion that we will never retreat, even when they attempt to confuse us with intersectional imperialism and identity reductionism. Make sure any question that you have of this sister and the Black Alliance for Peace, you're writing those down because you will get a chance to ask those. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask my sister to come back on, and she's going to introduce the next presentation by the Federation of Cuban Women.
All right, so I believe that on the program, a different name is listed. So what we're gonna have is a presentation by Analoy Lafargue. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She is a representative of the Cuban Federation of Women. But I just want to preface my statement by saying, due to the blockade against Cuba, Cuba is one of the countries, along with I think Syria, North Korea, maybe Iran, that the US and Zoom block from participating in conversations via Zoom. So at the last minute, Analoy recorded her contribution today and sent it to us. And this was last night, and I stayed up last night and this morning working to subtitle and translate. So if the subtitles and translations are rough, just know that it was a last minute thing, but I do believe that they should be comprehensive enough for us to all follow.
Buenas tardes a los y las presentes de la comisión, así como al público atento que nos acompaña virtualmente. Como representante de la Federación de Mujeres Cubanas para el área de África y Medio Oriente, expresamos nuestro agradecimiento y satisfacción por la invitación a participar de este seminario por el Día de la Emancipación de la Mujer Africana. De igual modo, hacemos extensivo la felicitación por el Día Internacional de la Mujer de parte de nuestra Secretaria General, Teresa María Bogué, y del Secretariado Nacional. Este es un mes no solo de conmemoración, sino también propicio para la reflexión en torno a los avances y logros alcanzados en materia de igualdad de género y así como de los retos y desafíos que nos quedan por conquistar. Un evento de suma importancia que tiene lugar aún en condiciones distintas, marcado fuertemente por el impacto de la pandemia de la COVID-19 y la consecuente crisis mundial, el cual configura un escenario complejo que demanda de la solidaridad con los pueblos y con las mujeres del mundo, en particular con las que viven en los pueblos racializados que se encuentran por debajo de la línea del humano, donde se expresa con mayor fuerza la feminización de la pobreza, la discriminación y la violencia de todo tipo. Nuestra participación es de especial significado por los lazos que nos unen a África, los cuales en sus múltiples expresiones internacionales, regionales o locales ha contribuido al realce del legado negro en relación con los valores éticos y estéticos de la cultura africana.
Se considera, por tanto, un intercambio propicio para estrechar la unidad y la solidaridad con el continente y con la diáspora africana en el planeta. Razón suficiente para que sea un área priorizada en nuestros intercambios por la solidaridad mantenida a lo largo de la revolución. Hemos sido convocados a abordar un tema sensible como lo es el de la opresión de las mujeres y la emancipación de las mismas como condición previa para la liberación de los oprimidos del sur global. Un tema oportuno para la Comisión de Mujeres que luchan por el socialismo, la justicia social y la revolución. Indudablemente, la FMC es trascendente en este sentido, pues surge para impulsar la igualdad y la emancipación de las mujeres en la isla. Tempranamente se comprendió que no era posible la construcción del socialismo sin las bases epistémicas del feminismo. Por ello, desde sus inicios tuvo un rol fundamental en el proceso de transformaciones iniciados en 1959, sin contar que la mujer ha estado presente con rol protagónico en todos los movimientos emancipatorios acontecidos durante el proceso revolucionario. Desde las sublevaciones de esclavizados, donde destacan Carlota y Firmina Lucumí, lideresa de los procesos de cimarronaje, como en las sucesivas batallas libertarias, donde son relevantes las figuras de Mariana Grajales, Ana Betancourt, Cela Sánchez y la propia presidenta honorífica Vilma Espín. La mujer cubana ha estado presente en las milicias, en la campaña de alfabetización, en cada programa económico y social por los que ha transitado nuestra revolución, así como vinculada a la vida laboral y al estudio, tanto en universidades como en la Facultad Obrera Campesina, en el cuidado de los hijos para los cuales fueron criados los ciclos infantiles, en el sector de la salud, en el deporte, entre otras hazañas que de conjunto con el pueblo hemos estado enfrascadas en lograr una sociedad cada vez más justa y equitativa. Hoy no podemos dejar de resaltar que son muchas las mujeres de vanguardia que se encuentran situadas en primera línea de enfrentamiento a la COVID-19, estando presentes en todos los espacios sociales. La llegada de esta letal pandemia no impidió, sin embargo, en crear estrategias en sectores tan imprescindibles como el de la alimentación y la salud, así como para la prevención y el tratamiento de la violencia de género para contribuir al perfeccionamiento de nuestra sociedad. A pesar de la situación epidemiológica de la crisis mundial que enfrenta el país y los efectos que sobre las mujeres en particular provoca el criminal bloqueo impuesto por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos, que califica como la principal forma de violencia y que obstaculiza el desarrollo y la plena realización de los derechos humanos de la familia, en Cuba se trabaja en la estrategia económica y social que conducirá a vencer gradualmente las dificultades y avanzar en el desarrollo sostenible con igualdad de género. Otras iniciativas que se impulsan están enfocadas en la reducción del embarazo en la adolescencia, en proveer de viviendas y apoyo a madres solteras, entre otras. Es pertinente agregar que las cubanas recibimos igual salario por trabajo de igual valor, accedemos a la seguridad social, una legislación laboral de avanzada garantiza nuestros derechos en el sector estatal y no estatal, entre ellos a la licencia de maternidad, a los cuales puede acogerse el padre y otros familiares que estén al cuidado de menores. Las mujeres tienen un papel clave en la actividad parlamentaria, donde son la mayoría en grupos legislativos. Ocupamos el 53.22% de los escaños en la Asamblea Nacional y representamos el 50.3% de los dirigentes del Estado y del Gobierno. Además, jugamos un rol fundamental en el ordenamiento del sistema jurídico, desde las facultades de Derecho hasta el nivel ministerial, constituyendo el 70% de los jueces y profesionales y fiscales. En el empleo representamos el 49% en el sector estatal civil, más del 80% tenemos nivel medio superior o superior, son el 69% en el sector de la salud y la mayoría en las brigadas médicas que prestan servicio en las diferentes regiones del mundo. Es también significativa la participación femenina en la dirección de órganos de prensa, en el campo de la academia y en la investigación científica, presente en el 70% de los principales proyectos de investigación y en los ensayos clínicos que se están realizando como parte del enfrentamiento a la COVID-19, y de modo general ocupa el 53.5% en el sistema de ciencias, innovación y tecnología, además de estar presente en otros sectores como el de la cultura, el deporte, la agricultura. Desde el pasado 23 de agosto del 2020 estamos celebrando el 60 aniversario de la Federación de Mujeres Cubanas, las cuales han demostrado que la experiencia cubana de crear una organización de masa por voluntad y decisión de las mujeres revolucionarias ha constituido factor decisivo para la unidad.
para movilizarnos, elevar nuestro nivel político, ideológico y cultural, creando conciencia de nuestras posibilidades y capacidades, siendo impulsadas y preparadas para participar de la obra de la revolución. Lo anterior nos permite afirmar que nuestra sociedad, sin ser perfecta, es una muestra de inclusión y la federación es un baluarte en la batalla por la igualdad y la justicia, donde es relevante el ideal de la presidenta Vilma Espín y de nuestro comandante en jefe Fidel Castro, vigentes en los logros alcanzados y en los que guían el camino a transitar, haciendo revolución sobre la marcha, parafraseando a Fidel hasta hacer desaparecer el último vestigio de discriminación. Tarea compleja que no depende solo de las condiciones objetivas en las que hemos trabajado atendiendo nuestras necesidades y con el apoyo y recomendación de los organismos internacionales, sino también de las condiciones subjetivas en el cambio de mentalidades y los modos de actuación. Lo alcanzado ha sido fruto de la voluntad del gobierno y del Estado, expresados mediante la aplicación de leyes, programas y políticas que se refrendan en la Constitución. Destaca de esta manera en el orden legislativo, lo que ratifica el compromiso de Cuba con la igualdad de género y la no discriminación, así como en la lucha contra todo vestigio de discriminación racial. Por una parte, la aprobación nacional, el Programa Nacional para el Adelanto de la Mujer, un programa de gobierno y la agenda de género del Estado cubano por la igualdad y la no discriminación, y por la otra, el Programa de Gobierno de Cuba contra el racismo y todo tipo de discriminación respectivamente. No obstante lo alcanzado, a pesar de la sagacidad y la tenacidad con que se han abordado las problemáticas de la mujer y la no discriminación, aún queda camino por recorrer. Vestigios que hay que arrancar totalmente, en especial de la subjetividad humana, sobre la base de una perspectiva abierta en desarrollo permanente y en un espacio temporal determinado a partir de la diversidad epistémica de la condición femenina en relación con las masculinidades. En la lucha por la igualdad resulta imprescindible el hacer, sentir y pensar de mujeres de los márgenes, discriminadas histórica y sistemáticamente, por ocupar para Occidente la zona del no ser. En este sentido, el diálogo intercultural permite el reconocimiento de todas las mujeres, dado la complejidad de su dimensión y ramificación de la militancia y accionar feminista en el presente. Desde esta perspectiva es posible comprender las esencias epistémicas de otras realidades, sin la cual el feminismo como movimiento global no estaría completo. De ahí que se hable de feminismos en plural, no solo apelando a corrientes de pensamiento, sino también a los procesos identitarios y espacios geográficos, los cuales deben ser analizados en sus márgenes, complejidades y antagonismos. En este sentido, defender la solidaridad entre las mujeres todas, así como la solidaridad entre los pueblos, despojada de toda manifestación de discriminación como imperativo para el mejoramiento humano, ha de ser una tarea constante de la sociedad toda y tema permanente en todos los espacios en los que reflexionemos como mujeres en la lucha por el socialismo, la justicia social y la revolución, donde la práctica descolonial y la libre autodeterminación de los pueblos sea la guía de nuestras acciones cotidianas. A ustedes una vez más nuestro agradecimiento por la invitación para participar de este seminario. Por una parte, convencida de que nuestra experiencia puede contribuir al fortalecimiento de los ejes de lucha de las mujeres africanas, de la diáspora y de las mujeres del mundo en general, y por la otra, oportuno para el intercambio de experiencias, las cuales serán bienvenidas en relación a lo que aún nos queda por conquistar. Desde lo bilateral y lo multilateral, el aporte de todas es decisivo para la vida sustentable en el planeta. Muchas gracias.
You got it.
Okay. We want to thank our sister for that very revealing and important presentation. Consistent, it's always consistent, and we appreciate that. And we are reminded that that luta continua, that struggle continues in Cuba. We still have our problems, we still have the struggles going forward, but it looks like the people together, people united, you know, won't be defeated, and they're gonna like move forward to like make things happen for the Cuban Revolution, of which we continue to support. So, I'd next like to introduce the Indigenous Peoples Movement, who most recently said to be extolled people to be a part of the movement, be a part of history, be a part of the change. And we were reminded that the Indigenous Peoples Movement indicates that our struggles are inherently intertwined with those of the Black community. The Indigenous Peoples Movement views all members of the Black community and all Black people as Indigenous people. Africa experienced the same horrific colonization at the hands of European settlers as many native tribes of North and South America. And with that, I'd like to introduce Sister Penny Gamble Williams, who is a member of the, correct me if I'm wrong, my sister, Chappaquiddick tribe of the Wampanoag Nation in Massachusetts. She is a spiritual leader of the Chappaquiddick and an activist, a visual artist, a storyteller, a writer, and a poet. Sister Penny Gamble Williams.
Thank you. Kwekwe. Akwani, which means peace. It's good to be here. The Indigenous Peoples Movement is an organization that was started to bring people together from all nations, from all Indigenous communities all over the world. And we are a collective of various Indigenous people, like I said, from all nations. And we are all fighting for our rights, fighting for land rights, and so many things, because Indigenous peoples all over the world have suffered immensely. But some of the things that I wanted to talk about, when we talk about women fighting for socialism, social justice, and revolution, well, what are we saying? We have to think about the strength of Black women and women of color, and that can't be overlooked anymore. With the things that we are facing right now, we have to understand that the power is within our spirit. The power is actually within this earth, and making that connection between ourselves and the earth and this whole universe. In order for us to move forward in any kind of way, we have to be grounded and centered in order to make change or to shift things within our movement. We have raised our voices for a lot of years, letting people know what is happening within our communities in terms of health conditions, and of course, the environmental conditions, which we are all dealing with. So women's empowerment, again, cannot be overlooked. Our spiritual power is the key to our survival. So raising awareness, teaching the children how important it is to know who they are and who they came from, and the people who came before them and before all of us, so we can realize that we are standing on the shoulders of people who have worked hard and maybe weren't able to complete what they came here for. So now it is our turn to make these shifts and changes within our society and to bring awareness. So reclaiming our spirit as Black and Indigenous peoples, it's about balance. It's about raising our consciousness. And so when we realize who we are and what our purpose is here on this beautiful earth that has been given to us, then we have to understand what it is we have to do. And it's a blessing if we can figure that out while we're here. So our strength, again, is from that power of spirit, the creator, and this Mother Earth. And we have to remember that the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. And within many Indigenous communities, we have been taught that the original instructions came from the Great Spirit, and that we were to be the caretakers of Mother Earth, that we were not to destroy it and we were to honor the earth. And here we are today with environmental injustices, environmental disasters through pipelines, through leaks within these pipelines, through oil rigs that leak. And we also have to consider some things that people really don't like to talk about or can't wrap their heads around, but that's geoengineering, the deliberate manipulation of the weather. And some of the weather patterns that we are seeing now are not normal. And many indigenous people know this, people who live close to Mother Earth, who rely on the natural things in order to survive and strive and live. They know that there is an imbalance. They know that it's not right. And it's not just climate change or the warming of the earth. Yes, some of those things are natural, but there are some unnatural things that are going on that we really have to pay attention to. And that's one of the main things out of many things that the indigenous peoples movement are concerned about because of what's happening all over this planet. So, as we all know, we are witnessing history every day because of the things that we are living, the times we're living in, and what we are witnessing. COVID, isolation, having to quarantine, people who are working at home but don't have everything that they need in order to accomplish things. And of course, unemployment. We all know that things are not normal, whatever normal is. So the challenge is, how are we going to work through all of the things that we are having to deal with? And it gets back to what I said in the beginning. It's that spiritual strength. It's that knowing and that understanding of what it is we are supposed to be doing while we are here on this beautiful earth that my people, the Wampanoag, call Aki. So we must not lose sight of all the things that are going on. And we also have to understand that the educational system is not working. It's not working for our children of color. So it is really up to us to further educate our children with things that they are going to need in order to move through all of these cycles. And it gets back to history. It's getting back to knowing our rights and knowing how to survive, knowing how to live, off the earth, because it's coming to that point. So the reality as women, we are fighting because the struggle continues. But we have to understand the purpose in our fight, so we're not wasting time, losing ground, or getting away from what the purpose is. And that's equality, and that is justice, and that is people living in ways that are going to elevate. And that's a tall order, because things are so out of order. So this is where we have to open our minds, continue to speak out, speak up. So with each generation, more and more truths are coming out, and so many events are connected. In other words, we finally have to connect these dots so we can ground ourselves and move things forward in ways that will allow the generations to come to live in a better way. And again, that's a tall order, but it's what we must do and what we have to do. With that, I want to say, with all the movements that have taken place, from the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Panther Party, the women's movement, the American Indian movement, Women of All Red Nations, the LBGQ movement, all of these movements and all of these conscious movements to move people forward and to bring some equality, some knowledge, some information to everyone so we can live in a way where we can live together. With that, I want to say thank you for letting me speak on some of these things, and hopefully we can all work as one for the good of all. Kutabatash, thank you.
And we thank you also, my sister. We were further enlightened when you reminded us that we need to speak up and speak out as you have done today. These things do move us forward. And we thank you for reminding us of our spiritual strength, of knowing and how to survive so that we can move the struggle forward. Now, remember, I asked all of you guys, if you had questions for any of these presenters, please write them down and or put them in the chat room, because there will be a time, we're almost at the end, but there will be a time for you to ask some of these questions. Right now, I'd like to introduce our last speaker on this panel, a dynamic young sister who you've seen presenting and moderating earlier. Her name is Sister Layla Brown, and she is a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, GC, and she's currently working as an assistant professor of Africana Studies at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. She is an avid scholar and researcher. It appears that we need to continue to do more and more of that as we try to better understand our struggle, strategize, and move forward. As a visiting research fellow at the Johannesburg Institute for Advanced Study, her research expanded to examine the crisis of racial capitalism and the COVID-19 pandemic. She's also she's also focused on Black racial identity formation in Latin America and the US, and its impact on Black radical organizers in the era of Black Lives Matter. We could go on and on and on. This sister is jam-packed with knowledge, information, and experience. We so appreciate her and love her. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our sister Layla Brown, who will talk on behalf of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, GC.
So in the interest of time, I think what I would like to do, I really do want to be able to allow for an exchange between the panelists, and I see a couple of questions that have happened in the chat already. And so really the main thing I think I want to offer in the context of this conversation is in some ways a return to the question that Sister Hadeel asked earlier, which is about the type of feminism that we want to see in our struggles for liberation, right? And there are many debates about over naming, right? And I don't think that any person of African descent, indigenous person, would challenge the importance of questions of naming, right? And so there have been debates about whether or not Black African women should identify themselves as feminists, as Black feminists, as African feminists, as Africana womanists. And even the debates between people who use the sort of framing of Africana womanism or womanism in general, there are some differences between the arguments that people like Alice Walker make versus Clenora Hudson Weems. I think for me, the primary contribution that I want to make today is that as a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, we are in the process of doing that work, right? We are in the process of figuring out, and I think it's important even that both Moremi and Sharice brought us back to the notion of triple oppression, right? And this is a way for us to understand the multiple and interconnected ways in which we experience oppression in the world and the multiple fronts on which we have to fight. And so the appeal that I would make which, you know, a lot of my own research interests have been in Venezuela, and to a smaller, a lesser extent in Cuba, because I'm really interested in the ways people of African descent and women are contributing to the state building, the nation building project under the guise of socialism. I want to make an appeal that we have to join and or build organizations that, you know, join organizations that exist if they appeal to us, and build new ones if they do not. And also figure out ways to work between our existing organizations towards our common goals, right? Obviously, we have differences of opinions and ideology and praxis, but I think that it is the only way that we will achieve the type of liberation that we want to achieve is through organization, and that at a certain point those organizations have to become mass, right? And if we are not about the work of creating it on smaller levels, they can never become mass. And so what I would actually like to do now is just open the floor up to the rest of the participants. I don't know if other if panelists would like to ask each other questions, or again, as last session, as anybody in the audience is welcome to do, continue our debate from earlier or move on to new questions. So I will say, I saw Fravia, there was a, so I don't know if people have, if everybody can see the chat. I know sometimes when we're on different types of, what do you call it? Different types of machines, it's hard to see. But there were questions about the government Venezuela publicly denouncing the dollar currency, and comments about sort of Pan-African schools across the globe. And Fabio, you put an answer in the chat, but I don't know if you wanted to maybe speak to that for the larger group.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, there were two questions at the beginning. One of them was, how is capitalism inside the revolution, how it manifests? And I just gave the example of the dollar that maybe, as some of you know, is like a fluent currency, not being our national local currency in Venezuela since mostly 2 years ago. Then somebody asked about what you just said, if we were denouncing it, and it was very legal, this issue of the black market for exchange years ago, I could say more or less 6 years ago. But then after sanctions and the blockade, the financial sanctions especially hit it so hard, I think it was like a silent agreement from the government to try to ease the situation inside the population because of our currency being beaten so hard because of inflation and all the sabotage. Maybe if you know all the money that all the banks around the world, especially in London, the US, they just kidnapped, they just hijack our money, they just robbed us. Millions, billions of dollars just because of sanctions, because US says so, and now also the European Union is getting into these kind of actions. And they keep saying, you know, are targeted sanctions for individuals, but they are not, because then you have, when you go reading the sanctions, Treasury Department or the OFAC in the US, you will see, yeah, you name the people, you name their accounts, but then you sanction PDVSA, which is our oil industry. Then you sanction the people who sells food for Venezuela. Then you sanction also Citgo. You took it away because of, you know, this puppet government opposition tried to build with Guaido until last year, and they decided to take away Citgo. Citgo was responsible, for instance, to pay operations for kids with difficult illnesses around the world, and that got blocked. So there were kids, people, Venezuelans dying, impossible to fly it out to have these operations, these surgeries. And then also you have all the nervousness and the worry situation for possible investors, because if you are a sanctioned country or you're a sanctioned person, but you're a minister, nobody, no business want to do business with you, just because you could be targeted, you could be out of market, you could be blah, blah, blah. So they, of course, keep those effects silent, but that is what is hurting the most my country. And government keeps taking a lot of measures to try to diminish the big breach or distance between, the level of poverty and as I said before, the level we were able to achieve to improve as a society. They are given, this kind of the box of food that now we have seen in the US and other countries because of the pandemic being distributed for free. Well, we implemented that more than 4 years ago as a direct benefit for Venezuelans through a national system to try to, keep up with the inflation and the lack of access to products we suffer in the past. Now we don't have that lack of access. Is not scarce, but the price is skyrocketing every week, even in dollars. Most of the Latin American nations use dollar to stabilize their economy, where in Venezuela we have inflation weekly in dollars, using the dollar. So it's completely craziness. And as I said, also it has been affected maybe people that haven't traveled away or outside the country, or people, they have to make a living every day. People now here is having like 5 or 4 jobs, different jobs on the side of, because the government keeps increasing the salary like 4 times a year. But you cannot keep up with inflation and with all this craziness happening financially. So people now, we look more. When I came back from the US, I was able to see how our society is being impacted in like being more American, but not in the good way, because everything has a good way and not so good way. So I won't say it's evilness, of course, never. Now people have five jobs. Because if you work especially for the public sector or the government, your salary is craziness. It can be like $8, $10. They increase it, and next month will be less and less. So people is making a living, a month. And then that is changing the pattern for the families. That is changing the pattern from kids being raised. Then the pandemic. Then you have all these, menacing things when Trump was president, our neighbors, Colombia and Brazil. So there's no public denouncing of the dollar. It was like that in the past. Right now, it's a very difficult situation. A lot of sabotage, opposition asking for sanctions internationally, asking for intervention in the past until last years, mainly. And this is impacting especially family and women. And then I arrived and I saw, wow, now we eat Nutella, we eat peanut butter that was not known in my country. It's not this bad. It is, it is a source of protein. I'm not complaining about that. It's like, why in the world now, instead of having, our national dish, which is arepa or whatever, every country has their own, we're having pancakes, so you can see how the impact is deeper. It's not only politically, it's exactly, thank you, cultural imperialism had hit us hard. And we were always, as I said before, under the influence because of our geographic situation and because we were an oil country, because of Hollywood, because of whatever you want. But now it's like deeper. We don't have a US embassy because we don't have relations, but now they are more present than ever. That's certainly a case of study that we could be debating on afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know that we are, I guess, over the initial time and approaching kind of even our stretch time. So I do want to again just say thank you to everyone. If you didn't hear me earlier, please do drop your email and name in the chat if you would like to remain connected to what's happening through the party. This conversation, a recording of this conversation, will be made available on the party's website at some point in the very near future. I also just wanted to uplift the fact that and Fabio was there too, that in 2019, The United Socialist Party of Venezuela helped with, along with the Network of Afro-Venezuelans, to convene an international conference to discuss the role of people of African descent on the left. And out of that conference came the Cumbre de Afrodescendientes that Flavia is part of, and that I'm also helping to contribute to. And so I think in terms of these calls for global solidarity, I think at that conference there were something like 50 different countries represented, somewhere between 250 and 300 delegates from all over the continent of Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America. So I just want to, you know, again, make the call again for us to join and or create organizations. We, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, are rebuilding. We are absolutely recruiting. So if you are interested in joining us, please either drop your information in the chat and or reach out to us via our website. I want to again just say thank you to all of our participants. I want to make a special apology to Dr. Sharice Burton-Stelly, even though I know she knows that Zoom bombing happens. I do know that it is extremely